Sarajevo, June 28, 1914. Archduke Franz Ferdinand arrived for military maneuvers and strategic inspections. 6 young assassins positioned themselves at different locations along the motorcade route through Sarajevo streets. Gavrilo Kabrinovic held a bomb beneath his jacket, waiting nervously. The Black Hand conspirators were ready for action. The Archduke's motorcade moved slowly through narrow Sarajevo streets. Armed officers rode ahead and behind the lead vehicle. Kabrinovic threw the bomb with all his strength. It bounced off the armored car, exploded underneath the following vehicle. Franz Ferdinand's driver accelerated immediately away from danger. The motorcade escaped rapidly. Conspirators realized they had completely failed. Historians say the assassination of Franz Ferdinand triggered World War I, but the actual story was far more complex. The conspiracy almost failed completely at multiple points. The Archduke was seconds away from survival and safety. Kabrinovic's weapon was designed to kill the Archduke. It wounded officers instead of the intended target. The Archduke escaped the bombing attack successfully. His motorcade was accelerating away from immediate danger. The other conspirators realized the attempt had failed. They dispersed quickly through Sarajevo's streets separately. Gavrilo Princip, the second conspirator in the Black Hand plan, abandoned his assigned post position. History remembers only the assassination itself. History forgets the failures that almost prevented the entire event. The simplified textbook account of Franz Ferdinand's assassination erases everything that almost prevented it from happening. Between Kabrinovic's thrown bomb and Princip's 2 final shots, chaos, failure, and pure chance intervened. Franz Urban, the imperial driver, made a navigational decision that reshaped European history permanently and completely. Most history books omit the driver's actual name. They also omit details about the wrong turn. Vladimir Didiger's 1966 study The Road to Sarajevo examined primary sources and investigation records directly. The Black Hand was a Serbian nationalist society founded to oppose Austro-Hungarian rule in Bosnia. Members of the organization plotted to assassinate Franz Ferdinand during his official visit to Sarajevo. 6 young men were chosen for specific positions along the motorcade route through the city. Gavrilo Princip was 19 years old, a Bosnian Serb from modest origins and radical background. Each conspirator was given a specific location and weapons. Bombs and revolvers were distributed carefully. The day of the assassination arrived finally. The conspirators took their assigned positions in Sarajevo. Gavrilo Kabrinovic stood with his concealed bomb, watching the Archduke's motorcade approach his designated position. As the car passed by slowly, Kabrinovic threw the bomb with all his available strength. The bomb struck the car's side and bounced off, landing beneath the following vehicle entirely. The explosion wounded several Austrian officers in the second vehicle. Franz Ferdinand was completely unharmed. Franz Ferdinand's driver immediately accelerated the vehicle away from the explosion. The motorcade departed the bombing scene rapidly. The remaining conspirators watched the cars disappear from view. They believed the mission had completely failed. Gavrilo Princip, positioned further down the route, gave up hope. He left his assigned post. Instead of remaining at his position, Princip walked toward nearby streets in Sarajevo looking for food. He arrived at Franz Josef Street, where shops and delicatessens served food to local customers. Moritz Schiller operated a delicatessen on this street. It was a modest but popular establishment. Princip entered the delicatessen feeling hungry and discouraged. The failed assassination attempt had shaken his resolve. He ordered food from the proprietor and ate among the regular customers of the shop. While Princip ate lunch, he thought the assassination attempt had failed. Revolution seemed distant now. Meanwhile, Franz Ferdinand decided to visit the wounded officers at the hospital in the city. His wife Sophie, Duchess of Hohenberg, agreed to accompany the Archduke to the hospital that afternoon. The motorcade was reorganized for the hospital route. Franz Urban received new directions to the hospital. Franz Urban was instructed to drive to the hospital to see the wounded military officers. The motorcade began moving through streets, but Franz Urban had not been given clear directions. At a key street junction, instead of continuing straight, Franz Urban turned onto Franz Josef Street. This was absolutely not the planned route to the hospital. No conspirator expected the Archduke here. The motorcade moved slowly down Franz Josef Street toward the delicatessen where Princip was eating. Franz Urban realized he had made an error in navigation. He began to reverse the vehicle, but the engine stalled immediately and completely. The car stopped directly in front of Schiller's delicatessen. The car was less than 5 feet from where Gavrilo Princip stood eating inside the shop. Hearing the commotion outside the delicatessen, Gavrilo Princip stepped out onto Franz Josef Street directly. He saw Archduke Franz Ferdinand seated in the stationary stalled automobile directly before him and unprotected. Princip reached for the revolver he carried. He had believed his chance had passed. He raised the weapon and fired at the Archduke. The first shot struck Franz Ferdinand. He fired again at close range. The second shot struck Sophie, Duchess of Hohenberg. Both Franz Ferdinand and Sophie died within minutes from their wounds on Franz Josef Street. Chaos erupted immediately in Sarajevo. Crowds gathered around the scene. Police moved to arrest Princip. Austro-Hungarian authorities immediately began their formal investigation into the assassination and the organized conspiracy behind it. Austria-Hungary blamed Serbia for organizing the conspiracy. Diplomatic tensions escalated immediately in Europe. Austria-Hungary issued a very harsh ultimatum to Serbia with demands that could not be met. Serbia appealed to its ally Russia. Russia began mobilizing its military forces in response. Germany declared war on Russia to support its Austrian ally. The chain reaction had begun. France joined Russia against Germany and Austria-Hungary in the growing military conflict in Europe. Germany invaded Belgium to reach France. Britain declared war to honor Belgium's neutrality treaty. Within 6 weeks, the entire European continent was engulfed in military conflict, mobilization, and total warfare. The war lasted 4 years total. Millions died in trenches and from artillery bombardment. The 20th century had transformed completely, and it began with a stalled car and lunch. Historians wrote that the assassination triggered World War I. This is technically correct historically, but this narrative erases the contingency, the failures, and the role of pure chance. The first bombing attempt is mentioned in some textbooks, but its failure is not emphasized. Princip's abandonment of his post and his lunch break are rarely discussed in historical detail. Franz Urban's wrong turn is recorded in the 1914 Austrian investigation, but almost nowhere else. Franz Urban, the driver whose navigational error enabled Princip's shot, is invisible in most historical accounts. Historian Vladimir Dedijer wrote The Road to Sarajevo in 1966 with extensive research. Dedijer collected eyewitness accounts that detailed the wrong turn and the stalled automobile. The Austrian investigation of 1914 documented Franz Urban's navigational error very thoroughly. David Mackenzie confirmed these historical findings in his later scholarly work on the assassination. Yet the simplified narrative persisted in textbooks. Assassination caused war became the standard historical account. The role of chance, error, and accident was erased from the mainstream historical narrative. Without accounting for contingency and accident, historians cannot explain why this particular day unfolded as it did. The 20th century's defining tragedy depended entirely on a wrong turn by one driver. It depended on a young conspirator choosing hunger over vigilance for one crucial hour. It depended on a bomb that bounced instead of detonating correctly against the vehicle. It depended on an engine that stalled at the exact moment of maximum opportunity. It depended on the stalled car stopping less than 5 feet from the conspirator. Remove any single element from this chain, and history diverges completely away from war. Franz Urban made the navigational decision that enabled history, and he is nearly forgotten. History presents itself as shaped by great forces, empires, and ideologies moving through predictable historical patterns. Yet sometimes a single wrong turn by one driver contains more historical consequence than armies and empires. Over 100 million deaths in the 20th century trace back to a stalled automobile on one street. Franz Urban, whose error changed the course of the century, remains absent from nearly every history text. History is not destiny, it is contingency, accident, and forgotten names of those whose errors echo forever.